Hello, everyone, and welcome into the Friday Walkthrough. I'm Cole Carmody alongside Monte Spiller. K-State wins the Sunflower Showdown 47-27, and now they get set for Arlington. The Big 12 Championship will take place next Saturday, and K-State will be there.
Yeah, before we get too far ahead with the Big 12 Championship, I'm excited. We talked about it a few weeks back, how if everything worked out and K-State wins out like we knew we could be back in the Big 12 Championship, and we are. I've heard it said over and over, Arlington, Dallas, the Metroplex area is going to be painted purple. You got K-State purple, Royal purple, then you got Horned Frog purple. It is what it is. But you know what? I'm excited. The boys are back, going back to Big D, going back to the Big 12 Championship. It's exciting times.
None of that would have happened if K-State wouldn't have taken care of business against Kansas. We'll talk about that game first in the first half. We'll look ahead to the Big 12 Championship in the second half, but we want to let you know we are sponsored by our good friends at the Part-Time Beverage Company. The first half is sponsored by the Club Special. The second half is sponsored by the Cape Cod. Make sure you're getting in and checking out those drinks. Make sure you're hitting subscribe on the YouTube channel. We're really trying to get to 7,000 subscribers. Maybe by the time you watch this, we might be above that. Keep going, keep pushing, so we can get out to more K-State fans. Make sure you subscribe on the YouTube channel. Make sure you subscribe on the website as well. Now let's talk about this game against Kansas, because there were some times where it was a little dicey.
Yeah. We talked about, I can't remember what the specific scores were that we predicted, but we both talked about, we knew this KU offense was special. Mm-hmm. And they proved to us and the rest of the people that are watching that they're good. They do such a good job of scheming. The quarterback is mobile. The tight ends, they got two really good tight ends that kind of fluctuate between tight end, fullback, you name it. They do a really good job with the Casey kid and the kid from Andale. I can't remember his last name. But they do a really good job of getting those guys in space and making plays. Defensive-wise, I got to give them credit. They played a little bit better than I thought they would, But K-State found a way to get big plays. We talked about special teams. It was more of a kicker. He showed out, man. Punting, kicking, you name it. But the big first play was the punt.
Yeah.
He booted it and backed the KU player up, and he ended up fumbling it, giving us the ball in the red zone, and that was huge.
That play was the turning point of the game right there. I mean, at that point, going forward, as soon as Ty Zentner punts that ball away, and you see the Kansas returner start to backpedal, I mean, I sat up in the press box. I turned to Ryan Gilbert, our coworker, and I said, He's going to muff this.
Yep.
Sure enough, he slips.
Yep.
The ball goes right through his hands, and Echo Boydo, credit Echo Boydo, the gunner who was flying down the field, had the presence of mind to know he's going to backpedal. I got to keep going because he's going to try and return this. Mm-hmm. He fell on the ball. That was just as impressive as the punt. I don't think people understand how hard it is as a gunner to continuously run down the field, track the football, watch the returner, know to keep leverage. I mean, that is a hard position to play on the field is that gunner position. That was an impressive punt, but Echo Boydo, credit him. I mean, he was the only one down there.
Yeah.
I mean, he was flying down the field.
Yeah, and one thing I kind of piggyback off of that just goes to show the level of football K-State is playing. If you look on the field, a lot of schools, they put backups in on special teams. But when you have starters on special teams, that lets you know that, hey, we're doing everything to have our best players on the field at all time to make plays to win the game. And with Echo making that play, set the tone. And like I said, he's a starter. A lot of times you have backup guys there. Not saying backups can't make those plays, right, but when you got the fastest guys on the field at all times, you set yourself up to be successful.
I found it interesting that to me, that play was a lot of coaching-related issues that Kansas had throughout the game on special teams.
Yep.
You could tell K-State was the better team on special teams, and they really outcoached Kansas. I mean, when you have Ty Zentner, who averages over 45 to close to 50 yards per punt, why are you not backed up on your own 10? He's catching the ball around the 30, 35-yard line because K-State had gotten a good return immediately, after on the opening kickoff. Why are you not having your heels on the 10? If the ball goes over you, that's fine. Let it go in the end zone. But the returner was standing on the 20, I believe, and he had to backpedal. I'm like, that just doesn't make a lot of sense to me. That comes from scouting. That comes from game plan. Yeah. That's a coaching mistake to me.
It is. It's either one or two things. The young man that was the punt returner chose to do his own thing, or it came from a lack of attention to detail. And as a coach, like you said, most coaches coach a guy, put your heels on a 10-yard line. If the ball's over your head, try to fair catch it or let it go. And he chose to back up, and it ultimately was a big mistake and rewarding for K-State. But like you said, I don't know if it was his choice or if it was a coaching choice. If it was, coaching decision. If it was on the coaching, that's on them. And attention to detail. You got to know that Zentner has a strong leg. He's been doing it all year, and he's a finalist for the is it Ray Guy?
Ray Guy, yeah.
Ray Guy Award. And so you got to know the guy's special. So if it's something you chose to neglect throughout the week, that's on you, and it paid dividends for K-State.
And I will say, as frustrating for KU fans as it must have been on special teams, they had to have been pretty pleased with the offense, and that's where I want to start with this KU team as we kind of go back and think about that game. Their offense was impressive. I mean, it was interesting. I felt like I was watching the Chiefs with all the window dressing, all the motions, all the shifts. I mean, they had 2 quarterbacks out there on the field at the same time for multiple plays. I mean, what they were able to do on offense really confused K-State in the first half. I don't think there's any other way around it. That offensive staff got into Joe Klinderman and Chris Kleiman's head. They messed around with some of their reads. They would run a lot of play action and do rollouts. Look down the field. Credit to K-State. They did not give up the big play.
No.
Jalen Daniels was looking to throw the ball down the field, but Julius Brents and Ekupoito did a great job of staying with their man and not letting the big play happen. And so what would they do? When the big play wasn't there, okay, we'll just dump it off for 2 or 3 yards. And eventually K-State started to catch on, but that is honestly how they started to move the ball.
Yeah, K-State had the bend but don't break mentality, which works great because a lot of schools are not as patient as we were on defense, and KU would take advantage of that. They'll dink you, then go over the top and get you for the big play with the tight end, with the fullback, or with some trick plays, which KU ran a couple of trick plays, like you said, having 2 quarterbacks in. But KU did a good job and does a good job of, like you said, window dressing. Most of their plays, they would shift the tight end and the fullback or the H-back, and then after they shift them, they will bring motion back the opposite way, and it forced the defense to understand what was going on. In a lot of cases, they would get guys open because the reads would be wrong or they wouldn't get lined up properly, accordingly, like they should. But as the game went on, we figured out what they were doing. We slowed them down, and actually early in the game, the first 2 quarters, K-State did a good job, and we got them to 3rd down, and then penalties would kill us and put them in a situation where give them a new set of downs at the 10-yard line or the 20, and it's hard to stop a team as talented as KU is on offense time after time, and that's how they got their points early. But like you said, we made adjustments and ended up stopping them late, when it counted. So, yeah.
I was very impressed with Devin Neal, by the way, the running back from
guy.
Lawrence. He's a stud. He also plays baseball, too. He plays center fielder for them. Multi-sport athlete. You don't see that too much at the Division I level, especially the Big 12. I thought KU's offense, they started to kind of come down to earth. I think Joe Kleinerman, Chris Kleiman figured it out in the second half.
Yeah.
It doesn't help. Again, we've talked about it. The special teams just killed Kansas in this game. The offense did their best. But at the end of the day, when you can't capitalize on special teams, when the other team beats you in special teams, it's really hard to win, especially when you quite frankly, are not as talented as the other team, as KU is not as talented as K-State. So I thought the offense for KU played well. I thought the defense for K-State figured it out. I want to ask you about VJ Payne. He got the start at safety. Obviously, Sincere Mason, Kobe Savage out for the season. True freshman VJ Payne stepped in. I thought he did a good job. There were some times where you could tell he was still trying to get used to the communication aspect, but when he had to make plays, felt like he was in the right spot.
No, he was, and it was one of those things. He was confident. He made a few mental errors, but I love the fact that Coach Kleinerman didn't go away from him. He trusted him, let him follow the process. And there were a couple of times he had some big hits. One of them was for 1st down, but he made his presence felt, and he wasn't afraid to go in and put his head in there and let guys know, hey, I'm here to play. Yes, I'm a freshman. Yes, I haven't had as many reps as some of the other guys, but I'm capable. And as time went on, he became more comfortable, and they shut down the offense in the second half for the most part. So he did a good job of stepping in there.
When we look at the K-State offense, again, just another extremely successful game. You score 47 points.
Right.
You got to be doing something right. And Will Howard threw the ball only 3 times in the second half. Yeah. He looked really good in the first half. He looked like an all-conference quarterback in the first half. I think I tweeted something out. I said, Will Howard is the best quarterback in the Big 12 right now. And at that moment in time, I think he was. Yeah. I mean, he was dealing. He threw for over 200 yards, 2 touchdown passes. He had a great first half throwing the ball. And then K-State decided in the second half, you know what? We're going to run the ball. Yeah. Where'd they go? They went to the good old trusty inside zone. They ran a lot of power plays. But the one play that they ran that we have been calling for them to run the whole season is the jet sweep.
Yes.
What do you know? Malik Knowles, 2 touchdowns on 2 jet sweeps.
Right.
I mean, they out-schemed Kansas on that play. If you go back and look, The Kansas linebackers, as soon as Malik Knowles was sent in motion, never once moved. They had their feet stoned in the ground.
Yep.
K-State took advantage of the KU ineptitude on defense, and it was a masterful thing to see.
They did, and it's one of those things. Both times we out-leveraged them because, like you said, the backers never adjusted. And whenever you bring somebody across, you have to adjust either from the inside of the box or you have to bring somebody that got to spin a safety down or something to be even outside the box, and KU never did that. And so we had them out-leveraged. Our receivers did a great job on the edge blocking. I could see KU's corners getting frustrated. A couple of times they were calling them for holding, but hands were inside. They were locked up. KU wanted to push the guys around like they were rag dolls, and they didn't have a chance. And when Malik turned upfield, he wasn't touched. He could jog into the end zone, and that's great scheming. And that surprised me that KU didn't adjust, but I'm glad they didn't because it allowed us to get 2 touches late, early and late in the game, and take advantage of it. So I was really excited for them. Early, I want to say KU's defense was playing motivated. You could see they were hyped up. They had to stop. The first 3 and out they got, they were hyped up. They were chirping at our crowd. But I think they realized after so many minutes that we were the better offense. Our offensive line was more dominant. And also the screenplay to Deuce backed up in our own end zone was huge. And that kind of broke their back as well because they had got us in 3rd and long. And we took advantage of it, and we kind of rolled from that.
They just didn't want to tackle in the second half. That was the biggest thing. And when you continuously are able to run the ball like K-State was in the second half, the defense is going to quit, and they did. There's no other way around it. Deuce Vaughn was literally carrying guys on his back for an extra 3 or 4 yards. That's how you know as an offense that you're beating the defense because they did not want to tackle. And then what do you want to do after Deuce Vaughn gets a little tired? Okay, we're going to bring another 220-pound running back and DJ Giddens in the game. And then you really won't want to tackle him, and they didn't. He ran the ball very well towards the end of the game. And not that it was ever in doubt, but I think DJ Giddens running the ball kind of reestablished that, hey, we're K-State, you're KU.
Yeah.
And there was, I think, some mental games being played back and forth between Chris Kleiman and Lance Leipold in that second half. Yes, they wanted to run the ball, but they also wanted to say, we are dominant. We are going to abuse you physically, and this is how we're going to do it. You know we're going to run the ball. We know we're going to run the ball. Everybody in the audience knows, or everybody in the crowd knows we're going to run the ball. So stop us. And KU couldn't, and, I mean, K-State had a really successful second half on offense.
They did, and for me, in my mindset, I loved it because they took the aspect of, we imposed our will on you guys. Yes, you had a good season. Congratulations, you guys. But remember, we're still big dogs and come to football, and this is how it's going to be, and take it like a man. And that's what we did. And it was one of those things where we broke their will. And you could see by their body language, like you said, they didn't want to tackle. And when you got, and nothing against Deuce, and Deuce is a powerful back, lower half, but he was dragging guys. And you can see guys looking around asking, like, what do I do? And at that point, we knew we had the game in hand.
I thought it was interesting when you go back and if you go back and watch that game, it was literally a tale of 2 halves.
Yeah.
I mean, Will Howard was slinging the ball around in the first half through the rain. It looked like it was going to be a 65-50 game. And then the defense settles in the second half. And then the offense picks it up running the football. I mean, it was literally a tale of 2 halves. KU played very well in the first half as a whole. They really did. I mean, it was a 9-point game at halftime. But those 9 points were practically given to K-State on the muff punt and then the holding call in the end zone for a safety. Now, that was on a 3rd down. KU would have had a punt. I understand all of that.
Right.
But, I mean, they basically gave K-State 9 points. And for KU to hang in there and it to be a 9-point game at halftime, there was probably some nervous fans throughout the stadium. But K-State really came out in the second half and I think played how we thought they would.
Right.
And a lot of people thought they would the whole game in the second half.
Yeah, in K-State, and we went in and made adjustments, like you said. I was nervous, not nervous. I knew the first half was going to be a battle. I figured as much because KU does some great stuff on offense, and when it's a rivalry, you're going to play motivated football no matter who you are. You know, any game you look at, they're going to keep it close. But we made the adjustments. We do have the better athletes across the board, and our guys understood what was at stake. No way we're going to allow KU to come to our home field on senior day, beat us, and knock us out of the Big 12 championship. I couldn't see it happening. And I guarantee it was reminded to our guys at halftime, and they understood it and took advantage of it, and they imposed their will and won the game in the second half in a physical mean.
We talked to the guys after the game, and they said there was no need to talk about, no motivation needed. I mean, if you can't get up for this game, then why are you playing football?
Exactly.
There was no motivation needed. Those guys came out. They played with the fire. The crowd was electric.
Yes.
If you were there, shout out to you because those guys talked about after the game how important that energy in the crowd was. It was amazing to see down on the field before the game, you could just feel like there was something different that was about to happen.
Yeah.
K-State took advantage of the moment, and they really imposed their will, like you mentioned. And now they have the Governor's Cup for the 14th straight season, getting ready to head to Arlington. What an outstanding night.
It was a great night. Even with the rain, the cold, it was fun. People were happy. You were high-fiving. A lot of times when you're winning, the cold doesn't matter so much, and the rain didn't matter so much. I didn't like it, don't get me wrong, but I tolerated it because I was happy to be there. I was happy for the kids. I was happy for the university, happy for the seniors in all aspects, not just the football players, band members, equipment managers, anything K-State. It was a good night to be a Wildcat, and now we look forward to the Big 12 Championship, and we get to see TCU again in Arlington, so I'm even more excited about that.
That's going to be a great game, and we're going to talk about that when we come back here on the Friday Walkthrough. Don't forget, we're sponsored by the Part-Time Beverage Company. Make sure you're hitting subscribe, and we will talk to you when we come back after this short break. Welcome back in here to the Friday Walkthrough. I'm Cole Carmody alongside Monte Spiller as we get set to preview Kansas State and TCU in the Dr. Pepper Big 12 Championship game. Don't forget, we're sponsored by the Part-Time Beverage Company. First half was sponsored by the Club Special. The second half now is sponsored by the Cape Cod. As I mentioned before, make sure you're hitting subscribe on YouTube. We're so close to 7,000 subscribers. If you hit that, maybe we'll throw a party. Maybe we won't. Either way, make sure you're hitting subscribe and helping us out. Speaking of parties, the Big 12 Championship, Texas Live, is going to be absolutely ridiculous on Saturday. So if you're going down there, first of all, be safe.
Yes.
We don't need anybody doing anything stupid. Second of all, have fun. It's going to be a great time. Let's talk about this game because it is an 11 a.m. kickoff.
Ooh.
College Game Day will be there.
I saw that.
Chris Fowler, Kirk Herbstreit, Holly Rowe on the call. This is a national big-time game. Obviously, it's only one of a handful of games going on. As a former player, I know you've played in some big games, but what is that emotion like knowing that you're getting set to play for a Big 12 championship?
It's a good feeling, honestly, and it's one of those things where you're excited for yourself, your teammates, your family member, for those guys who are from the Metroplex area down in Texas. They get to play in front of the fans and families again. But the hardest part is not looking too far ahead because you understand what's at stake, and there's a lot of media going there. Like you said, college games, they're going to be there. You got your buddies, you got your schoolmates, you got other people that everybody wants to be a part of it, and everybody wants tickets, and everybody's wishing you good luck. You have to stay focused, and that's the hard part going into the game. The good news is we've seen them once before, and they've seen us as well, but it's not like a lot of unknowns. You know what you're getting, so you can prep for it, but you have to stay disciplined, you have to stay focused, and you got to go in understanding we're here to win a game, not to party, and that's the hardest part. But when you win the game, after the fact, it's a great time. But leading up to the game, you got to stay focused. Enjoy the process. Don't get me wrong. Enjoy the time with your buddies because K-State's in a unique position. They're guaranteed 2 games, and so they have opportunity to go in and win 2 more games. So it's a great situation for them, but you can't look too far ahead and prep for the game.
I found it interesting. We were talking to Eli Huggins on Tuesday at the press media media availability, and he said, "Yeah, I mean, we pretty much know what they're going to run. We don't have to cram, study anything. Like we have a really good idea now. Have they put in new stuff? Sure, but we've put in new stuff too.
Absolutely.
We understand the personnel. We kind of know what the pictures look like, and so now it's just going to come down to execution and." I mean, when you go back and look at that TCU K-State game from October, K-State didn't execute very well. No. There was a lot of injuries, and we'll talk about that. But, I mean, it's kind of I feel like if you're a K-State player, you have to have a sense of, okay, now I understand. Like, nobody's expecting us to win. We're going in there. We've seen them before. But also keep in mind, K-State had a lead of 18 points on them in the first half in this first matchup. So there's that confidence to know it doesn't matter what the score is. We're going to be in this game. And so it'll be interesting. But the one guy, if you're a K-State player, if you're a K-State fan, if you're a K-State coach, who you feel like you need to stop on this TCU offense, it's Quentin Johnston. Yeah. He was hurt a little bit against K-State, didn't play a ton, did catch a nice long touchdown pass. Just so happened that was on the same play where Julius Brents saw both of his hamstrings get hurt. Yep. But how does K-State go about stopping Quentin Johnston? Throwing to the fact, we talked about it earlier, no Sincere Mason, no Kobe Savage. Stopping Quentin Johnston has to be priority number 1.
Yeah, I agree 100%. But, I don't know why, but something in me feels like we're going to have success slowing him down. I'm more nervous about the run game because I feel like TCU's run game the last couple of weeks, especially in last week, caught my attention against a really good Iowa State team.
Yeah.
They ran the ball with a purpose, and they did it at will. So I guarantee they feel good about themselves right now with the run game. And if I'm TCU, I'm thinking, you know what? We ran the ball extremely well against the Big 12's best defense. Why stop now? Don't get me wrong, they're going to throw the ball some still, but I have a feeling they're going to come out and try to run the ball. And I think K-State understands the task at hand, but I feel like Julius Brents is going to take it personal. He up until the point he put his hamstrings, he was doing a pretty good job on him.
Yeah.
And I feel like he thinks I know he can continue to cover him one-on-one with a little bit of help over the top. So I think he's going to come in and be up for the challenge and show people, hey, I got hurt that game. I am a dude at corner. Watch me lock this guy up.
And I actually totally agree with you. Just talking to Julius Brents after the game on Saturday, somebody asked him, and he goes, you could just tell. He's like, yep, I'm ready for that game.
Yeah.
Not much needs to be said. He understands the challenge that he has. And Quentin Johnson, first-round pick for sure. Any NFL team would be lucky to have him. Julius Brents wants to prove he's an NFL cornerback. I think everybody around these parts thinks he is. On the national stage, shutting down Quentin Johnson would completely elevate his draft stock and help him in his career. So I think that's a matchup you need to watch right there. Julius Brents, Quentin Johnson. You mentioned the running game and specifically Kendre Miller. I mean, this is a guy, 16 touchdowns on the season. He finds the end zone a lot. I think he's only about 30 yards short of Deuce Vaughn for second in the Big 12 in rushing. So you mentioned he is a dude. Kendre Miller ran all over K-State earlier this season. You can make the argument that he is the maybe the best back in all of the Big 12 with, Deuce and Bijan Robinson. Yep. So, I mean, he again, you're right. I think if they can stop Quentin Johnson, slow down Quentin Johnson, and make Kendre Miller turn, and TCU will turn to Kendre Miller, at the end of the day, do you really trust Max Duggan? And I understand Max Duggan has had a great season. He's only thrown 3 interceptions. He's in the Heisman race. But Max Duggan is good. He is a good quarterback. He is good because of the players around him.
No, absolutely. And taking nothing from Max because he has played lights out this year. But you got to remember, he is a good quarterback. I wouldn't say great, but he is a good quarterback, consistent. Most Big 12 schools would like to have a Max Duggan as a backup quarterback. As a starter, too, as well, in some instances. But he didn't win a starting job from the jump. And I can look and say the same thing about Will Howard. But I feel like Max has played to his potential, and he's due for a not-so-great game. And like you say, he's taking advantage of guys around him. He's reaped the benefits of a good defense, creating turnovers, putting them in short yardage situations, and them winning games late. He needs to be challenged, and they need to force him to win the game. And I feel like K-State, when you force Max to win the game, it puts us in a situation where we are in the driver's seat compared to having him just dump it to other guys who are great players and them making plays. So let's take away his studs and make him beat us.
If you compare Max Duggan and Will Howard, the difference are, I would almost think that TCU's skill position players compared to K-State's, taking nothing away from Malik and Phillip and Cade. No. But TCU's skill position players, I mean, it's just another. They're on another level right now.
They are. Numbers don't lie, and they make plays. Don't get me wrong. We got guys that make plays, but they do it a lot more often in games, and they've been doing a lot longer than our guys too. Speed kills. They got guys that can run, and we do too. But it's a different level, and it's facts. I love our guys. Wouldn't trade them for anybody, personality-wise, player-wise. They're great guys. But the fact is, TCU got some dudes that can play.
They do, and that's what makes this matchup so compelling. You mentioned the defense. One of those guys is Travarius Hodges-Tomlinson, the nephew of LaDainian Tomlinson. 5 career interceptions. He is the guy. He might be one of the best defensive backs in the Big 12. Yeah. That's a guy when K-State's on offense that they need to target. I will say this. When Will Howard came into the game against TCU, he played outstanding, and then he got hurt, and the whole game changed. I think Will Howard continues his success. You can have success against this TCU defense. Yeah. I mean, plenty of teams have scored on this TCU defense. I don't even think the TCU defense, quite honestly, is I would say they're maybe top 4 in the conference, but I think that's maybe even being a little generous. I mean, when you look at the games that they have played, they have won because of their offense. Yeah. There's not very many games where they've won because of their defense, like K-State. Now, you could say the same thing about K-State. But I just tend to think that K-State is a little bit more well-rounded.
They are.
Maybe they're not as explosive on offense. I think that's fair. Yeah. But they have a little bit better defense.
Yeah.
Maybe K-State has a little bit better special teams than TCU does. But you know what? That special teams play against Baylor where they ran the kicker out there on the field and won the game, that's what makes this matchup so interesting, is because there are just so many different things. And, if that game was played in Manhattan when K-State played TCU, I would venture to say K-State would win that game. Yeah. So this is just outstanding. We get to see this match, this rematch. And now that you kind of know what to expect, it just means you have no idea what to expect. Something completely out of the blue is going to happen, and it's going to be about who responds.
Yeah, and I feel like K-State guys, and we have a history of playing in the Cotton Bowl, in the Cowboy Stadium and Texas Stadium, and we play well. We travel well. And the thing about it is, though, with K-State's defense, I feel like we're getting healthy again, with the exception of our 2 safeties being out. But we've had guys the last 2 weeks to step up and play significant minutes in situations where they need the ball out, and they're getting used to it. So now that panic is no longer there. On the flip side, like you said, TCU's defense is good, not great, but I predict Mr. Sennett will be the MVP of the game, and I got a feeling he's going to go off, and he's one of Will's top targets, and for good reason. But I have a feeling that they don't match up well with him, and I feel like he's going to get a lot of touches, and when he does, he's going to make big plays, and he's going to have a big game. Will it be MVP? I'm not sure, but I wouldn't be surprised.
And one thing that TCU did well last time K-State played them was they shut down the run. I mean, Deuce was very limited in that game. Granted, he was still pretty dinged up.
Yep.
He was hurt in that game. He had to come out, which, again, if you go back and you watch that game against TCU, if you haven't, or if you have some time, go back and look at the highlights. It's worth looking at. There was a time when there was like 5 or 6 former walk-ons on the defense at one point for K-State, just completely ravaged by injuries. But Deuce Vaughn was dinged up in that game, and they kind of held him in check. They're probably going to try and do the same this week. But the way the offense has been running the football, it would not surprise me to see K-State have some success running the ball. And once you have success running the ball, then we start to see the play action. Will Howard can throw the ball down the field, but that's where Ben Sinnott comes in handy. Throw those seam routes. Throw those quick hitters, those 5-yard outs. Then you start to continue to have success in the run game. The play action shots will develop down the field. I think that this team is set up perfectly to win this game. Vegas thinks it's going to be a close game, and we'll get to our predictions here at the end of the show. But, I mean, you say Ben Sinnott. I'm going to say the running game.
Okay.
That is what I look at in this matchup, because if K-State can run the football, they're going to have a lot of success on offense.
And they will. And I wouldn't be surprised to see a little more option this week. And the reason why TCU's defense is they're quick to pull the trigger. They go, they're fast flow. And a lot of times when you get guys who don't play the option a lot, and if you go to the quarterback, he's going to pitch it. If you try to slow play him, Will is good enough to make the right decision and keep pitch relation with Deuce. On the flip side, too, I expect K-State, because last time they played TCU, if you remember, they used Deuce a lot as a lead back, which probably was the reason why he got hurt initially. But I would be surprised to see him as a lead back again this game. Maybe once or twice just to give him a look, but as much as they did the last game, that's not going to happen. And I think that's going to play a big role as well. I look to see DJ in there more, running the ball, even as a running back or as a fullback. And at that point, play action, like you said, is going to come on into play. Wouldn't be surprised to see him leaked out of the backfield, wheel route. Who knows? But I think K-State comes in, and each week, Coach Klein, each week he has gotten better and better with his play calls. And the diversity of it is he calls great games, and guys are getting frustrated, and all of a sudden he'll pull out his pocket, and I'm like, that was a great call. Yeah. So I'm excited for him to see what he does in this game in the Big 12 Championship.
Well, there might be a little something up his sleeve. On Tuesday, there was a reporter who asked about Adrian Martinez and his availability, and he said, well, we'll know on Wednesday, and we'll kind of see. If Adrian is available to play, Chris Clement already said, Will is starting, he is our guy. Yeah. But if Adrian is available, could we see a little bit of Adrian Martinez running the football? I wouldn't keep that. I would not think that wouldn't happen. I wouldn't be surprised to see that if he's healthy. That's definitely going to happen for the bowl game. Oh, yeah. If Adrian is ready by then. But if he is ready by Saturday, will they play him? It might be an interesting tactic.
I'd love to see him play. Not for obvious reasons, he gives us a better chance to win it. Not at the quarterback position, but 2 quarterbacks at the same time, trick plays. Why not? And he's a senior, and he came to K-State to get an opportunity, and he is a Wildcat, and I want to see him go out on top. So I would love to see a guy get a chance to play in the Big 12 Championship and in a bowl game as well. But just having them both available makes me happy.
Yeah.
Makes me happy.
You
So,
never
yeah.
know, especially with the history of quarterbacks getting injured against TCU.
Yeah.
You just never know when you're going to need that
Seriously.
second quarterback. Could we see a Tua Tagovailoa, Jalen Hurts situation
You're not
where
wrong, yeah.
one guy wins the starting job, the other guy gets hurt in a big game, the backup who used to be the starter comes in? I don't know.
Yeah.
Just something to keep an eye on as we go throughout this game. Before we make our picks, I do have some notes. The series is tied all time at 6-6.
Really?
May not seem like it, but the series is tied 6-6. TCU is actually ahead 6-5 since they've been in the Big 12.
Huh.
The one win came earlier in the 80s.
Right.
Actually, K-State played TCU then. This is the first time K-State's been in the conference championship game since 2003.
Man.
Obviously, they won that game against Oklahoma 35-7. K-State fans will not soon forget that game. And then this is obviously the first time K-State's played at AT&T Stadium. You mentioned it earlier, since last year when they hosted Stanford there, and they won that game in convincing fashion. TCU has played there, I think I wrote down 7 times since it's open. So there's some familiarity there. Let's get into our picks here, because I think I know who you're picking. You probably know who I'm going to pick. It's been like this all season long. I think I've only picked against K-State one time, and they ended up winning that game. But again, this is just how the season has unfolded. I mean, you feel really confident going into every single game. Monty, I'll let you make your pick and your score at first.
Because we are familiar with each other, a lot of times, normally, if this is the first time we're meeting, I would have picked a high-scoring game. And it's still going to be somewhat of a high-scoring game because both offenses have the capability to score. And I'm picking K-State to get lucky number 7, because you say it's tied 6-6.
Mm-hmm.
Let's go K-State with number 7. And I'm picking K-State 35, TCU 28.
Okay, yeah, I think this game might come down to who has the ball last.
Yeah.
I think K-State's going to win. I think there's going to be a little bit more points scored. I think that just because with how dominant this team has been on offense, that's going to continue. I mean, both of these teams, just high-flying offenses. It's going to be a great game. I'm going to pick K-State to win 41-38. We'll say Tyzender hits the game-winning field goal at the buzzer. The fans rush the field. It is going to be happiness in Arlington. K-State will beat TCU. The TCU fans will go home sad. K-State will win the Big 12.
I'm good with that. You know what? And a lot of people have asked me, how do you feel about K-State beating TCU and maybe knocking TCU out of the national championship playoffs? I'm like, I bleed purple. K-State purple. Doesn't matter to me.
Hey, you know what? Hey, and they still might make the playoffs. They might make it.
But I'm all in with my Cats, man. I'm all in with my Cats. I'm excited. National game, college game day. It's great for the city of Manhattan, great for the university, great for the programs. Let's go Cats. If
you're driving down to Arlington, make sure you stay safe. Make sure if you see K-Staters along I-35, give them a little honk on the way down there. If you're going to the game, have fun. If you're staying at home, have an even better time. Enjoy every second of the game, wherever you may be. Thanks, everybody, so much for tuning in to This Week on the Friday Walkthrough. We will talk to you next week. Will K-State be the Big 12 champion? We will have to wait and see. Until then, I'm Carmody. That's Monte Spiller. Thanks, everybody, for listening, and we'll talk to you next week.